Welcome to Happy Talks with Dr. Alice and Donovan. Dr. Alice Fong is a holistic naturopathic doctor and founder of Amor de Soi Wellness, and Donovan Jensen is a software engineer and founder of HowToHappy.com. Together, they're out to cause more happiness in the world.
Hi everyone, welcome to Happy Talks. Today I have the pleasure and honor to introduce to you my friend Michael Ceely, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist and mental performance coach. So please welcome Michael. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. My pleasure. Great to be on the show.
Yeah, wonderful. Great. So today our topic is on performance, and I'm just curious, what does that look like for people or athletes, or like what is it that you do to help people with that? And how did you get into this line of work?
Yeah, sure. So my background is in athletics. I've been a sporty guy all my life. Little league baseball, basketball, and then I pursued bicycle racing as a profession right after high school, did that for a while. So I really love sports, and I really like what I learned from sports. And so I apply that to my psychotherapy practice. So I work with some athletes, I work with non-athletes, and I really like this idea of what I call a performance mindset. So it's not like an elitist mentality at all. It's more of just, how can you make your life work better? What is it that you're passionate about, whatever you're interested in? Be an athlete, or maybe you're a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer or a baker or a plumber or whatever it is, and you love your work. How can we make that work better? How can you make your life more fulfilling? So coming from an athletic background and using, you're always trying to achieve better results. I think there's like a good way to do that and a bad way, to oversimplify it. There's a way to get the results that you want and enjoy the process.
Yeah.
And there's also a way to get the results you want and suffer, and that's not what we want. So I work on helping people get better performance, achieve their goals in a way that's really nurturing to them, others around them, and actually energizes them, as opposed to creates burnout and things like that. So,
can you give like an example of what that looks like?
Sure. So some of the people I work with in my therapy practice, they're busy professionals, and they're having a lot of challenges right now, as a lot of people are with the lockdown and everything. And so people are having to really adjust their mindsets because they're at home and there's some tensions with their family because they've never experienced this kind of routine before. So one thing I do with the people I work with, athletes and everybody, is I work on, and it's almost a cliche, but I work on a mission statement. You don't have to call it a mission statement. You could call it sort of like a rooted statement or a guidepost or something like that. And really writing down what your greater purpose is, what your greater goal is. So you have sort of this overhead perspective of what's really important in your life. So if you get hit with some challenges during the day, or your routine's totally thrown off, you're still marching in the same direction of where you want to go. Yeah. So when I work with people in my therapy practice or with athletes, and say like an athlete might get injured, right? They're thrown off their path and they get depressed, which is totally normal and natural. How can we get them, really remind them of what their mission statement is, right? And typically the mission statement is something that's bigger than yourself. So like for you, Alice, it might be like, I want to make people's lives better, as simple as that is, right? Yeah. And that could be a little more elaborate. Or Donovan, maybe yours is similar, like helping people, because we're kind of in the helping profession. So how can we really remind ourselves in those difficult times of what our mountain peak is, like where we're headed toward? And so when working with people, we create that. Like, so one of the first things that I like to do, and that you can literally print it out, put it on your wall, and just look at it and go, oh, right, I had a bad day, but I'm still headed in that direction. So that's one of the things I do, is the mission statement, and that helps people just keep their perspective. So
I have a question in terms of, like, if we put it more in the sports arena, right? Sure. What does a mission statement in that realm look like? Because I could see how it could kind of end up as a goal, or at least to me, like that's kind of what comes to mind first, is some sort of a goal. Like, I want to perform and achieve X, but that's not quite a mission statement. So I'd be curious, like what those look like in the sports realm.
Yeah, great question. So I think, again, the mission statement has to be about a higher purpose. I'm not saying necessarily spiritual or anything like that, but just something that gives back to other people. So if you're in sports and if your goal is to win a championship, and if that's the end, that's a little, there can be something more inspiring to tap into there. So like if, say, you're in the NBA and you win the championship, what is the purpose of that? It's not just to win. It's to inspire people to exercise more. Or maybe you have a charitable organization where you give to youth basketball camps and you get kids out playing. Yeah. So it's thinking about in sports, win or lose, you're setting an example of healthy lifestyle that resonates with people. You're leading by example. You can, you can give back, you can coach, you can be a mentor. Like the mission statement is typically something that's higher than yourself. So typically that means giving back to people as much as possible. And I think a lot of athletes, the trap to fall into is it's just about me. Like I need to win. And if I lost, it's all my fault. And, it's this kind of isolation mentality. And if you think about all the people that you might be inspiring, or say if you're an athlete and you get injured, how do you come back from that? Like there's a great Michael Jordan story who he got injured in his second season in the NBA. He was like, going to be the superstar. And then he breaks his foot, like this terrible injury. And I won't tell you the whole story, but essentially it is worth checking out because it's like a comeback story. And it's an inspiration to athletes who get injured. So thinking about like the mission statement is everything that I do, whether I like it or not, is making an impact on the world, however big or however small. How do I want to always be mindful of that, win or lose?
Right.
So that's like the higher purpose. So that if you're an athlete and you're going through a tough time, just remind yourself, oh yeah, I'm not alone. I'm impacting people, win or lose. And that can really keep things in perspective and stop burnout. And yeah.
No, I did watch the documentary, The Last Dance. Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah.
It was so inspiring. And it just kind of was like Michael Jordan was just such an incredible inspiration with his, persistence and his desire. And it was about the bigger picture of just like winning it for his whole city. And actually the whole like country, really just rooting for him and just like seeking that it was beyond himself, that, he is going to show people what it looks like to play all out. And there's like put all the cards on the table, like doing everything in his power to win the game. It was like, so that was so incredible. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense to me because I played soccer for a long time and relatively competitive, like traveling state. And I didn't play in college, but before that. And it's interesting because I didn't really have a purpose or anything that I was like shooting for. So it was kind of hit and miss how much effort I would put in and motivation would like ebb and flow. But then afterward, like some years later when I wasn't playing nearly as competitive or seriously, I kind of found a mission statement, like implicitly, this was not an explicit process, but of just wanting to raise the level of competition wherever I play, right? Just wherever I play, I just want to make sure that I'm contributing to the game and that it's, a high level. And that was the mission. Since then, when I want to work on particular aspects, I always have the motivation because I'm always thinking like, okay, it's this bigger purpose of like, I want everyone else to kind of like see the level I'm playing at and come up to that level. Or if I'm in a place that everyone's better than me, like I'm rising up to the level they're at. And again, like I said, it was kind of an implicit process. And obviously I wasn't doing it as like this is my, like, I'm an athlete, this is my job. But even in the smaller stakes realm, I've noticed just from this conversation and reflecting that it made a big difference in me being able to sustain motivation.
Yeah. No, Donovan, I love that because it's like, I think there's this notion that like competitive competition is bad or it's, elitist or there has to be a winner and a loser. But like, it sounds like this implicit sort of mission statement that you started to let soak into you is just the beauty of that kind of competitiveness. So, I mean, you can be a sore loser, and we know people like that in sports or business or whatever, but it's this, again, it's like you're resonating with other people. You show up on, say, the soccer field, and they can even see it in your body language. Like, man, this guy's looks like he means it today. I better up my level. So it gets the whole vibe of the field and going up, and everyone increases their skills. I would say everyone wins.
Yeah.
I like to think about sports in that way. That like everybody wins, even if you get last place in a running race.
Right.
Like, you still win because you finished, right? And people watching you is like, oh my God, he finished. That's so amazing. So yeah, raising the level of competition, like you say, is really an intoxicating thing. It's good for everybody. And as long as you're a good sport about it, everything's
right.
It'll be a good sport.
Pretty bad about it. Pretty bad. Always a good sport. Yeah.
And I noticed that, at least for me too, it was different, and this may be something that you work with people on. But when I was playing competitively, there was so much in my mindset that was closer to this, like, I need to win. Like, I'm playing competitive stuff and I need to win. And now that I'm not doing that, it's still competitive, but it's not like there's no trophies. There's no one's getting drafted in this age group in the middle of a rural area. Like, nobody's moving on to anything fancy. I noticed there's so much more space for me to find just like a healthier place to build out of. Yeah. And I'd be curious if that's like something that you work through. Because if you got me when I was in high school playing soccer, and you were like, what's your mission statement? I'd be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just trying to win.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So in working, say, with younger athletes, boy, I tell you, like a coach is so important. A coach that has a kind of mentality of really nurturing the players and like a win-win mentality all the time. That's great. But say if you don't have that mentor or coach, the way I would work with, say, like a younger athlete would be the camaraderie, like focusing on all that good stuff. What's it like, when you're celebrating victory with your teammates? What's it like when you lose with your teammates?
Yeah.
Focusing on the camaraderie, I think, is a good thing too. Yeah, there's younger athlete. I think there's really a lot of room for growth, especially with coaches working with younger athletes. Unfortunately, you see a lot of bad examples of coaches who, for whatever reason, are just way too competitive in the bad competition kind of way. Yeah. Or parents who are, a little bit too into their kids' sport. Maybe they didn't make it in Major League Soccer, right? But then my kid's going to do it, boy. So,
right.
Yeah. So I think there's room for more training, more sort of growth, like in sports psychology and talks like this, right? So like I would love for, a Little League coach to watch the Alice and Donovan show, Happy Talk, and get them just thinking about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Like they're the higher purpose of your sport, right? So what is that? Or what is the higher purpose of your business or whatever it is? And if you can write that down, that it changes. I don't think it reduces your competitiveness. I think it just imbues it with like a different quality. And I think it's more of like a long game. Like you're gonna achieve more. You're gonna tap into more of your potential in the long game if you have an attitude which is more like, how am I giving to other people? So
yeah. What came up for me when you were talking was just like the different coaching styles, and I'm sure people respond to different styles in a better way, but for my experience, like the style of berating people, just like calling them a loser and terrible and a failure, it's like that doesn't resonate with me, because I feel like it makes people feel like a failure, and then it's not empowering for them to look at what they can do to increase their performance, rather than just like finding that fine line of like pushing them outside of their comfort zone, which is important, not just being like a friend, just letting them get away with anything that they want, but just still pushing them, but with a sense of like love, because they believe in them, not like because you better win or you're a loser, kind of a mentality. So I don't know, like maybe people respond to things better, and they want that for some people, and others might not. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think it's a fine dance, like it's an art, right? And it's also individual too. There's some athletes, or say if you're a mentor, a coach, or a therapist for somebody, you're going to know that your client or your athlete or whatever is individual, and they're going to respond to maybe a little bit of berating, right? A little spice, right? And if the athlete knows that you truly respect them and care, and you can get
away with it.
And it might be for that particular athlete, that's what they need. It's like, hey, get off your butt or whatever, and that might be perfect. But it's really having a lot of awareness of your words, your impact, the individual style of the athlete or the client or whatever, and how they're going to respond to that. And there's sometimes you want to be more nurturing and forgiving and cut them some slack and give them a day off or whatever. And then there's also times when you want to push them and be like a little spicy or whatever. So it's an art for sure.
Yeah, I did hear, like, just from the documentary with Michael Jordan, that he was on the spicier end of things with his teammates. But that brought him to the championships. Sure. I guess maybe it also matters what the goal and the intention is to, perform better compared to last year, or take it to the very elite top level. Then, it's going to require a different, higher level of performance from everyone on the team.
Yeah, and I think there's different ways to get to your goal.
Yeah.
Like you can take the brute force, hard, mean route.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll get there.
Right.
But a couple years perspective on that, what kind of person are you building in your interior?
Yeah.
Right. And I also think that there's a way to get to your true high potential through a different route.
Yeah.
Right. So you don't have to be mean and super, a bad sport to do that. I think that, ultimately sports is a game, right? So, you could call life a game too, but it's a little higher stakes, but sport is like, it's just a game. I think that if you're an athlete and if you know that the game is, you do get a little spicy, competitive, or strutting around like this, not starting a fight, but like getting a little a little mean or spicy is okay, as long as you can let that go. Like the second you're off the court, you shake hands or whatever it is, or you're a good sport. Right. Like like in soccer, for example, there's some pretty aggressive plays in soccer. As long as you're not like, you can tell like the dirty players, right, who are going to intentionally injure somebody. That's certainly not what we're talking about here, but like being able to engage in the sport, knowing it's a game, and then when it's done, you leave it on the field. Like that was our fun little experiment. So.
Yeah. And I know, as a player, you can definitely see who is playing from this, like, win at all costs mentality. And it's not, I don't know. The majority of people are not going to be an athlete for their whole life as like the main way of providing income. So at least for me, or maybe like the more general case, it's like these games that aren't that high stakes. And it's really crazy when you see, people doing dangerous plays in like rec league. And it's like, somebody's going to break a bone. Like, this is not worth this kind of thing. Like, or there's going to be a fight, like aggression is going to ramp all the way up, and there's going to be a fight for what? For like this $20 summer league? Like, this is really not a great place for that. So I just wish there was more conversation around, and I think what you were saying, like earlier periods where like our coach influences, where like this mindset either gets drilled in or just doesn't get checked.
Yeah.
And then it follows people into the rest of their life, and then they have some of this like residual stuff in these lower stakes sports, and then it's just not pleasant to be around. Like, there's a couple leagues that I just quit playing in because people were so aggressive and like playing right on the finest edge of like, oh, this will give me a yellow but not a red, and so like I'm gonna slam this guy into the wall or whatever else. And like, it's just like you were saying, like when you think about like the long game, it's not sustainable at all, and it's not even fun or pleasant.
Yeah. And usually those aggressive moves don't really help you advance in the game. They're more like a desperation kind of thing. So yeah, it's hard to, like you're saying, when the younger you can coach athletes, or even if you're like the head of your family, like coach your kids to be like, be a good sport, and it's okay to be competitive in school. So I used to work in high schools as a counselor, as a therapist inside a high school, and I just remember seeing kids that were just heartbroken by getting a B. Like they'd be getting straight A's and they got a B and they broke their 4.0 and they're just devastated. And some of their parents would even berate them more. It's just so hard to see that when we're talking about the long game. Like that just doesn't even matter. So yeah, I hope people are watching the show, because it's like whatever leadership position you're in, be it a coach or a therapist or a parent or whatever it is, it's like really pay attention to your words and really the long game and the overall sort of mission statement. You focus on the big picture and you're going to be okay.
Yeah. There's like the saying that a B in an Asian household is like is an Asian F.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And it's just like, there's no room for failure. And it's like, oh man, sometime once in a while I'd get a C, and that was just like, oh my God, it's just like, that's so terrible. So yeah, I get that feeling. But at the same time, it just kind of, I feel mixed, because I knew my parents wanted the best for me, and it drove me. I have like a seriously insane drive to perform in life. I have like a bazillion degrees, and I have like multiple businesses and a third venture. It's just like all these things I got going on, and it's really exciting. And I'm like, is it because, I don't know, somewhere it's like, settling is not an option, kind of a thing, I guess.
Yeah.
I like that, but then I do get the experience of like burnout, where I'm like doing too much at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, can I really do it? And then feeling like I'm not living up to what I think I should be. And that gets in my head. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you have a lot of awareness about your drive, and also sounds like your parents, like you mentioned the word respect, like I think kids and anyone who's receiving some sort of mentorship can really know if that leader respects them. So you can be like really push somebody, right? So like, don't get a B or whatever, but you can also feel if the maybe the punishment or the disappointment is rooted in meanness or disrespect, as opposed to, oh, this is just like extremely tough love here, Yeah. And then you're mentioning like, you can get caught up in burnout, but having that, just having the awareness is so huge.
Oh, makes a difference. Yeah.
So it's like if you're playing the game, if you will, be it in business.
Right.
Oh my God, it's 11 p.m. and I'm still working. I've been up since 6. You're like, that's kind of cool, like in a way, like that's kind of exciting. But then also being able, it's like the metacognition, right? So like I'm observing myself working too hard. Like you catch yourself and you go, oh, okay. Let me do a self-intervention as like my own therapist onto myself, or my own wellness coach onto myself.
Right. Yeah.
What would I tell my client, right? If I'm a wellness coach, would I say, hey, it's okay to wind down, So I think a lot of what we're talking about, and what I've noticed just in working with athletes and my clients and my therapy practice, is that awareness of sort of like being the observer of your own life, the observer of your own behavior, and catching yourself breaking your own rules, right? Like I promise to get to bed at midnight every night, and it's like 1 a.m. It's like, wait a second, and being able to forgive yourself for that.
Yeah.
Right. And then again, it's like you're coming in kind of from above and saying, tapping yourself on the shoulder and going, hey, like I'm catching myself doing what I shouldn't be doing, right?
Yeah.
And that could go also for maybe you're a leader and you break one of your rules, like you're a coach and you yell at one of your kids, athlete, and you go, oh man, right?
Mm-hmm.
guess what? You can apologize. Like if you break your own
True.
sort of rule, you can apologize, and that could be a powerful opportunity as well.
Oh,
Yeah, one thing I wanted to talk about was like habits and routines,
yeah, definitely.
like for performance.
Mm-hmm.
What I like to teach people is so habits and routines are sort of can become this automatic thing. It's like
Mm-hmm.
brushing your teeth, like drinking morning coffee, or whatever your kind of rituals are. Yeah, there you go. So I think a lot of people, and myself included, up until like a couple years ago, I did not have a morning routine. And really all people who achieve a lot of their own potential and goals, I think, have a good morning routine.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't, I think it's not too late to start a good morning routine. So that's one thing I teach. And this is really like all athletes, all like, high performers have some sort of a way that they start their day where they feel in control as opposed to being reactive to what's going on.
Mm.
One of the big habits, and this, you've heard this before, but the phone, this thing here, like, do not look at that for the first 30 minutes of the day.
Yeah.
Period. Like that is one thing I started a couple years ago, and it was a total game changer.
Yeah.
So it's so hard to start. So hard to start. You feel like, oh my God, like what if I need to
check my messages.
Right. And
Yeah.
I would say, you were asleep 30 minutes ago and you still didn't have to check your phone. So don't check it for the first 30 minutes. And do something for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So either, journaling, meditation, I like to exercise, or a combination of all of those. So I really wanted to stress that in our talk too, is once you can automate something like that, and it usually takes a couple months to make it automatic, where that becomes your new default, the better results you're really going to get during your day and over the year. Like it just really, it's so important to have habits and routines that really keep you on track. So
Absolutely. I can relate to that because did you read the book Miracle Morning with Hal Edward? That's really good. It's kind of emphasizing that the point of having that morning routine.
Yeah.
And I took that on for I think 6 weeks back in the fall. And I always describe myself as not a morning person. I'm like a night owl kind of thing. So the idea of just waking up extra early to do all these things was just like, that doesn't sound like I like to sleep. I feel like I do get more out of sleeping than doing all these things. But when I took it on, because my friend suggested it, so we were kind of doing it together. She's up in Alaska. And she recommended this book and I didn't even know what it was about, but I was like, personal development, sweet, let's do it. And I was like, wait, you want me to what? Wake up early every morning and do this, where I ended up doing, because I'm just so busy all the time.
Yeah.
What I created my routine is like get up, brush my teeth, drink some water, exercise for like a 10-minute thing just on an app. And so I was just working out from home, and then I meditate for 10 minutes was like my routine. And I'm always been one where like, I don't have time for anything. I'm always go. And I realized in those few weeks that I did it, I was actually way more focused, way more productive, performing at a higher level, because I wasn't like all over the place like I normally am. I was just like hyper focused, laser focused on getting through my day. And it just made such a huge difference. Now, am I always consistent with this practice? Not at all. And I'm starting to like realize, I don't have the account, so I'm putting more accountability structures in place to be able to be more consistent with that, because I do know when I have been successful at it, it just makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I think you can even have it like 15 minutes. Like that's totally doable.
Yeah.
For people who think that they have to always be doing something during the day.
Yeah.
Really, like if you don't have 15 minutes for yourself, like you don't have a life. Like you gotta carve out that time, and like you're saying, you're more focused and efficient.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah, habits are really important. Yeah.
And I've always found when I feel like I don't have 15 minutes in the day, if I go look at my phone usage for the day, somehow these apps have eaten up like 2 hours
Yeah.
So the time
Oh,
is
yeah.
really there. It's just a matter of like scheduling it out. And I can definitely, just to add on to what you were saying, feel the difference. I try to get up, set my target for the day, just like the one thing that I would like to get done no matter what, and then work out. And the difference between doing that and not doing that is ridiculous. Like, if I don't set that one thing, sometimes no things get done. But when I set the one thing, like 50 things get done, and it just sets up the momentum for the day. I would be curious. Let's say like I didn't have a morning routine.
Mm-hmm.
What would be your advice on how to get started? What's a good way to kind of start building up that habit?
Yeah, I would say the baby steps, right? Because we want to set you up for success. So I would ask you, what time do you typically get up in the morning, right? So what would that be?
So like around 7.
Okay, so around 7. I would say get up at 6:45, right? So set and maybe even get accountability. Have like say, I'm going to text. Hey, tell your friend, like I'm going to text you at 6:45. I've got this new routine. Right? You're like, oh my God, now I have some accountability going here. So I'd set you up with the accountability. I would say get up 15 minutes earlier. And then I would say, super easy, put your running shoes right by your bed and like walk around the block. So just like super quick, there's no room for, getting some coffee or checking your phone. The first thing you see is your shoes. And you get up, you get 15 minutes earlier, you text your friend, all right, I'm out the door, and you do something totally different. And that is, you have time for yourself, away from your phone, away from your worries, away from the things that you should be doing. And you just look at the birds, or you just take a walk, or you jog, or whatever it is you want to do, but you're outside for 15 minutes. Sunlight, as we know, releases a lot of good hormones in the body. Neurotransmitters, just sunlight. So that's going to start your day off really nicely. So if I were, mentoring you, I would be telling you this exact same transparent sort of story. Here's all the like biochemical benefits. Here's the accountability piece. And you're just gonna have a better start to your day because you're going to feel like you've already accomplished something. You're going to feel more in control too. You're not being reactive. You're not watching the news. Oh my God, here's yet another terrible thing that I have no control over that's happening 1,000 miles away, right?
Yeah.
Things like that. So yeah, I would say just get up literally 15 minutes earlier. It's not that hard. Have some accountability and do some exercise like right away in the morning before you, before anything. So that would be the starter kit. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. It sounds like you hit it from like a bunch of different angles. So you set up your environment in a way that the decision is easier to make, which is like your shoes are right there. Maybe you didn't say this, but maybe you put your phone in another room so that it's not, something you grab for like immediately. Then you also set up some accountability. So like just an extra nudge of like, oh, someone expects this from me.
Yeah.
So I think that's like the main thing I took away is like you hit it from all these different angles and you make it, 15 minutes earlier is not like, like I can't wake up that early. Like that's a small, very approachable piece. So I think that's a really practical, nice way to get started on that. So thanks.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and just to add to that too, I would also provide a lot of education around the process of routine building. There was this, can't remember the name of the study, but it was if you Google like University of London study habits, there's this big study that they did about how long it takes to instill a new habit. And it was like the average was 2 months. There wasn't much less people who achieved that in less than like 60 days. And that's just like when things start to get automated, like the myelination of the neurons, all this kind of fun, like real stuff is going on in your brain. That's how long it takes. So I give people education on the process. Like you are going to fail at your new routine for the first 2 months. But if you realize that, it's like, oh, I'm not actually failing. I'm just kind of like massaging my brain cells and I'm retraining myself. And then something starts to happen. Like I started my morning routine. I think it was like 3 years ago now. And boy, it was tough. But then I hit this threshold after a couple months where I couldn't go back. Like it felt more uncomfortable to sleep in. And it was like an itch. Like I would get up, like, oh, I'm just going to skip today. I'm going to have some coffee. I'm going to like watch the news. I'd be sitting there and be going, this just doesn't feel right, and it was like from my body. It wasn't like, it was so interesting. So I would give you education on the process too, like, hey, here's what to expect, just the reality of it. Stick it out, make it past here. And then I may even get further accountability too. You know, like, can you have a buddy who does the same thing? Get someone else on board. So, yeah.
Yeah, that really speaks to me a lot in terms of that morning workout that I talked about. Like, I think I've been doing that for 5 years or so now. And if I don't do it, I am so jittery.
Yep.
So just like, so my body is like, hey, don't we have to go expend a bunch of energy this morning? And it's like, got to find something to do. So, but I also remember breaking in that process that several years ago was so rough. And I thought, like, this is never going to be automatic. So it's nice to have a relative target. You know, maybe it's not exactly 60 days, but somewhere in that ballpark is nice to know as a target, so that you can kind of mark off, like, okay, I've done 30 days, it's still super hard.
Yeah.
It's kind of to be expected. Hopefully it's getting a little easier, but then, you know kind of like what target you're aiming for. Because I remember not having that and being like, I don't know how many days I've done this, and I don't know if it's ever going to be easy, and I don't know if I can live like this forever.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it becomes automatic, and that's the point, is to get it automatic. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the goal. Definitely. Awesome. Well, Michael, we really enjoyed having you on our show today. It's been a pleasure. Was there anything you'd like to plug before we wrap up today?
Anything I'd like to plug? Well, let's see, the shameless self-promotion at the end here, right?
Exactly.
Well, I'd like to plug you guys. I think I love your show. It's so refreshing to have this in the ether, to hear it's such a positive podcast. So I'm wishing you continued success with that. Plugging myself, you can check out my sports psychology website. It's called Ceely Sports. That's Ceely Sports. Also, Ceely Counseling is my therapy practice, and that's it. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you everyone for watching. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
You can check out more content at howtohappy.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you can stay up to date on the videos. We've also got a Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook that you can check out. See you next time.